Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Vrajajanaranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajanaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Vrajajanaranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajanaranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajanaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Haribo, 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 Gora Haribo. Jaya, 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 Śrī Caitanya, Jaya, Nityananda. Jaya, Beta, Chandra, Jaya, Gora Bhakta Vinda. Jaya, Jaya, Śrī Caitanya, Jaya, Nityananda. Jaya, Beta, Chandra, Jaya, Gora Bhakta Vinda. Jaya, Jaya, Śrī Caitanya, Jaya, Nityananda. Jaya, Beta, Chandra, Jaya, Gora Bhakta Vinda. Jaya, Jaya, Śrī Caitanya, Jaya, Nityananda. Jaya, Beta, Chandra, Jaya, Gora Bhakta Vinda. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Ananta Goti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Shri Radha Gopinatha ki jai, Grantaraj Śrī Caitanya-charitamrita ki jai, Gaura Premanande. Nama Om Śiśupāla Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Śrīmate Bhaktivedanta Swamin Iti Namine Namaste Sarasvatī Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vancha kalpatarubhyascha kripa sindubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. He Krishna karuna sindhu dinabandhu jagatpate gopesha gopika kanta radha kanta namostate. Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishavanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. We're reading from Śrī Caitanya-charitamrita this morning, This is Antya-lila, chapter 5. Ramananda Rai instructs Pradyumna Mishra, although that's the discussion of part of the chapter, but what we're reading is the second main episode of the chapter. And we'll read from verse number 146, and we'll see. We might just read to the end of the chapter. We'll see how the Spirit moves us. But I thought it's nice to begin with, to go back to the very first verse of the chapter, vaiguṇya-kīṭa-kalitaḥ, paiśunya-vraṇa-pīḍitaḥ, dainya-arṇave nimagno aham, caitanya-vaidyam āśraye. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami is saying, I am infected by the germs of material activity and am suffering from the boils of envy. Therefore, falling in an ocean of humility, I take shelter of the great physician, Lord Śrī Caitanya Mahāprabhu. Elsewhere in Chaitanya-charitamrita, Krishnadas Kaviraj indicates his age, that he is very aged and that he doesn't know whether he will live to complete his work. He says his hands are shaking, so he's in a frail condition. And this verse, to me, indicates that he's also experiencing some diseased condition. He refers to germs of, he says germs of material activity, but some sort of infection, perhaps, kita. And also he refers to vrana, boils, pīḍitaḥ. He is tortured by boils, which he calls the boils of envy. And then he appeals to the Lord Chaitanya Mahāprabhu, as Caitanya-vaidyam. Vaidya means physician. So it's nice we can remember Chaitanya Mahāprabhu as Vaidya, the physician who cures all disease, all material and spiritual disease. Okay, verse 146, and this is continuing a discussion of, this is Swarab Damodar Goswami is speaking, and he is speaking to an unidentified Brahmana from Bengal. And he says, matta Śiśupāla karila nindan. Matta Śiśupāla karila. sei-vākye sarasvatī karena stavana. Matta Śiśupāla karila nindana. sei-vākye sarasvatī karena stavana. Others. Okay. Where am I? Yes. Mata. In this way. Śiśupāla. Śiśupāla. Karila nindana. Blasphemed. sei-vākye. By those words. Sarasvatī. Sarasvatī, or the goddess of learning. Karena stavana. Offers prayers. Translation: Śiśupāla also blasphemed Krishna in this way, but the goddess of learning, Sarasvatī, offered her prayers to Krishna even by his words. Okay, let's see now whether to just continue or to say something. Let's continue. Taiche shloke tomar arte ninda aise sarasvatir arta shuna jate stuti bhase. In that way, although your verse is blasphemous according to your meaning, Mother Sarasvatī has taken advantage of it to offer prayers to the Lord. Jagannathahan Krishna Atma Sharupa Kintu Ihan Daru Brahma Stavara Sarupa. There is no difference between Lord Jagannath and Krishna. But here, Lord Jagannath is fixed as the absolute person appearing in wood. Therefore, he does not move. This is nice. Lord Jagannath, we may like to remember when we have darshan of Lord Jagannath here in the temple, he is known as Daru Brahman. Daru means wood. So it's Brahman in the form of wood. And the explanation here is because he is appearing in this form, therefore he does not move. However, the point is he is Brahman. And now you may say, that sounds kind of impersonal. Well, no, not necessarily. Vedanti tat tattvavidas tattvam yajñānam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavaniti shabdyate. So that same advaya jnana is having these three different names depending how you look at it, how you look at him. So Brahman means Paramatma, means Bhagavan. And you can turn it around, you can say Bhagavan means Paramatma, means Brahman. These are the same with different angles of vision. So here Lord Brahma is called Daru Brahman. And therefore, Stavara Swarupa, his non-moving Swarupa. He is in this particular form. Taha saha atmata ekarupa haya Krishna ekatatvarup dvairupa haya. Thus, Lord Jagannath and Śrī Caitanya Mahāprabhu, although appearing as two, are one, because they are both Krishna, who is one alone. Now here we might want to back up a little bit and come to this verse, which was text 112, which has prompted Swarup Damodar to react in the way he has reacted. He's reacted quite strongly. So this is the verse from this unidentified Brahman. Vikachakamala netre Shri Jagannatha Sangye Kanakaruchiri Hatman Yatmatam Yaprapanna Prakriti Jadamashesham Chetayan Avirasit Sadishatutava Bhavyam Krishna Chaitanya Deva. The Supreme Personality of Godhead has assumed a golden complexion. Shri Radha Gopinath Ki Jai. The Supreme Personality of Godhead has assumed a golden complexion and has become the soul of the body named Lord Jagannath, whose blooming lotus eyes are widely expanded. Thus he has appeared in Jagannath Puri and brought dull matter to life. May that Lord Śrī Krishna Chaitanya Deva bestow all good fortune upon you. Now, what's wrong with this verse? Yes, that's one point, bringing dull matter to life. To say that Lord Jagannath is dull matter is a problem. But then someone may say, wait, here Swarup Damodar has said that he is Daru Brahman. And Daru, what does Daru mean? Wood. And wood is dull matter, no? It's Brahman. So is it dull matter? No, it's Daru Brahman. So that's a problem. And what's the other problem? There's another problem here. I'll read again. The Supreme Personality of Godhead has assumed a golden complexion. Is that a problem? Okay, that might be a problem. But that doesn't seem to be the problem here. That may also be... Anyway. Okay, the Supreme Personality of Godhead assumed a golden complexion and has become the soul of the body named Lord Jagannath. Is that a problem? Well, that's not exactly the problem. The problem is he has become the soul of the body named Lord Jagannath. Huh? Making a distinction between the body and soul of Krishna. That's the problem that Swarup Damodar is going to, or has been objecting about. He has been objecting and quite fiercely. He says at one point, Durgati, which Prabhupada translates, you're going to a hellish destination as a result of this. I was thinking, this poor Brahmin, poor fellow, he no doubt he intended the best. After all, he's glorifying Lord Chaitanya, and he probably spent many days laboring over this work to make it perfect, nice Sanskrit, and perhaps the rest of the drama is in Bengali, or we don't know Sanskrit or Bengali. We don't know if this drama is somewhere in some archive, because we wouldn't know even if we found it unless the first verse is there. Then we know it, because we don't know what the rest of the drama was, because the poor writer didn't get past his first verse. He just spoke the first verse, and Swarup Damodar said, "Stop!" No good. So this is a concern of Swarup Damodar. And he has spoken very sharply, but then he comes to speak about how, well, in a sense, he's saying, well, we can take it another way. If we take help from goddess Sarasvatī, the goddess of learning, then we could take it in another way. And he gives examples of how this has happened in the case where Krishna has been insulted by Lord Indra in the Govardhan-lila. The specific words that Indra uses can be taken in a different way, according to Sarasvatī. And similarly, when Śiśupāla insults Krishna, also the commentators will say, well, we can take these words in such a way as to understand that they're actually glorification of the Lord. And so what he's saying is, we can take this praise which you attempted, which has philosophical problems, we can salvage it. And here's how we can do that. But Krishnadas Kaviraj doesn't really give us details so much of how he salvages the particular verse, as far as I could tell. In any case, he says, thus, Lord Jagannath and Śrī Caitanya Mahāprabhu, although appearing as two, are one, because they are both Krishna, who is one alone. Samsara dharana hetu je ichcha shakti tahara milana kori ekata jaiche prapti. The supreme desire to deliver the entire world meets in the two of them, and for that reason also they are one and the same. This is so nice. Samsara dharana hetu. Hetu, this word means cause. Has a sense also of motivation. Ahaituki bhakti, the word ahaituki comes from the word hetu. But ahetu, without cause. So bhakti, which is without motivation, that is pure bhakti. But here the word, you may say, okay, but then this is samsara dharana hetu, the motivation of wanting to deliver from samsara, so that's motivation, so that's a bad thing, right? Wrong. Here, hetu is a good thing. Samsara dharana hetu je ichcha shakti tahar milan kori ekata jaiche prapti. So here, Sarv Damodar is taking the idea that Lord Jagannath and Lord Chaitanya are one in a second sense. The first sense is because they're both Krishna, they are one. And now he's saying because they have the same motivation, they are one. What is their motivation? Samsara dharana hetu. Samsara dharana, to deliver from samsara. Shakala samsari loker korite udhar, gora jangama rupe koila avatar. To deliver all the materially contaminated people of the world. That same Krishna has descended in the moving form of Lord Śrī Caitanya Mahāprabhu. So we have the stavara rupa. Stavara means not moving. Stavara get jangama. We hear sometimes these two words together, moving and non-moving living entities. Stavara, jangama deke, nadeke taramurti. So here the distinction, now we get a distinction again, the distinction between Lord Jagannath, who is stavara, who is not moving, and jangama, Lord Chaitanya, who moves. the Hare Krishna movement was started by Śrī Caitanya, who is on the move for the purpose of delivering the conditioned souls. Shakala, all. Shakala samsari. So samsara means repeated birth and death. Samsari means persons who are experiencing repeated birth and death. Jagannath darshane khandai samsara shabadesher shabaloka nare ashibara. By visiting Lord Jagannath, one is freed from material existence. So, what does that suggest for us? We're in the right place, right? By visiting Lord Jagannath, one is freed from material existence, but not all men, not all human beings of all countries can come or be admitted here in Jagannath Puri. How many of you have visited Jagannath Puri? How many of you who haven't would like to visit Jagannath Puri? How many of you have entered into the Jagannath temple? Any here? If you have the right color of skin, you're allowed to enter. Has to be brown. Huh? Take a picture. Huh? You see pictures, yes. And of course, Lord Jagannath does move, doesn't he? He comes out and he goes on his Ratha, and there is Ratha Yatra, and then everyone can have darshan. About entering the temple, that's been an ongoing issue over decades and actually centuries. Recently, some months ago, there was a letter written by the Supreme Court of India, addressed to the pujaris, the managers of the Jagannath temple, suggesting, because apparently that's all they could do, but they suggested that they open the temple to make it accessible for everyone. Well, we haven't heard anything since then, so I suspect that the pujaris and the priests and the managers looked at the letter, and if they didn't burn it, they probably just filed it away and said, forget it. And this, despite also the fact that the king of Puri, the Gajapati Maharaj, whom I've met personally, and who said, this is ridiculous, you should all be allowed to enter the temple. He says, I'm sorry, I'm powerless, even though I'm so-called king, nobody listens to me. This is what to say, the age of Kali. Okay, anyway, Krishna's Kaviraj is expressing awareness, or Sarup Damodar. By visiting Jagannath, one is freed from material existence, but not all persons of all countries can come or be admitted here in Jagannath Puri. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Deshe Deshe Haya Shabaloke Nishtarila Jangama Brahma Haya. Śrī Caitanya Mahāprabhu, however, moves from one country to another, personally or by his representatives. Thus he, as the moving Brahman, delivers all the people of the world. Now here we have to say that Srila Prabhupada was being slightly inventive with the translation, because in the verse itself, it doesn't say personally or by his representatives. it just says Śrī Caitanya Mahāprabhu, Deshe Deshe Haya. Lord Chaitanya goes from place to place. Desha, Prabhupada translates as country. It can also just mean place, area. Lord Chaitanya traveled around what is now India, but if we take it as country, of course, India has been so many different. One could argue it is actually so many different countries with so many different languages. But Prabhupada is adding this, he's kind of slipping in there, personally or by his representatives, to make a point which is perhaps obvious to us, that indeed Lord Chaitanya is going everywhere, and he's continuing to go everywhere with his associates in the form of its representatives. Thus he, as moving Brahman, Jangama Brahma, delivers all the people of the world. So here Krishnadas tells us that Swarup Damodar is appreciating this distinction. So he's kind of supporting the Brahman at the same time that he was so sharply criticizing him. He's saying, yeah, actually there is some truth to what you are saying. And he goes on, sarasvatī arta kahilun bivaran ehobagga tomar aiche korile varnana. Thus, I have explained the meaning intended by Mother Sarasvatī, the goddess of learning. It is your great fortune, he's speaking to the Brahmin, it is your great fortune that you have described Lord Jagannath and Lord Śrī Caitanya Mahāprabhu in this way. So now he's kind of complimenting him. You're fortunate, actually. Krishna gali dite kore nama ucharan she nama hoitar muktir karan. Sometimes it so happens that one who wants to chastise Krishna utters the holy name, and thus the holy name becomes the cause of his liberation. Now he's expanding out this point of intentionality, but does it really apply to this Brahmin? Because the Brahmin doesn't intend to insult Krishna, certainly not. But he's going a step further. He's saying someone may even intentionally want to insult the Lord, and it doesn't work. It's this sort of common expression. I don't know where it comes from, but someone trying to insult an exalted person is like spitting at the moon. It's not going to affect the moon. Upon tabeshe kavi shobar charane pariya shobar sharan loila dante trina loya. Upon hearing this proper explanation by Swarup Damodar Goswami, the Bengali poet fell down at the feet of all the devotees and took shelter of them with a straw in his mouth. Tabe Shabhavakta Tare Angikara Koila Taraguna Kahi Mahaprabhur Milaila. Thereupon all the devotees accepted his association. Explaining his humble behavior, they introduced him to Śrī Caitanya Mahāprabhu. Joy. So this is a story with a happy ending. And then it goes on, Se kavi sarbatyaji rahila nila chale gora bhakta ganer kripa ke kahite pare. By the mercy of the devotees of Lord Śrī Caitanya Mahāprabhu, that poet from Bengal gave up all other activities and stayed with them at Jagannath Puri. Who can explain the mercy of the devotees of Śrī Caitanya Mahāprabhu? Now this point points back to one of the points that Swarup Damodar has made earlier in his scolding of the Brahmin. That is, he tells, I think it's the first point he makes to him. He says, you want to understand Bhagavatam, you have to associate with devotees. And we may ask, wait, what does it have to do with Bhagavatam? This is about Lord Chaitanya and Lord Jagannath. But Swarup Damodar, how does Swarup Damodar spend his time with Lord Chaitanya? Much of the time they are reciting, they are remembering, they are hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam. And I've sometimes suggested, it seems to me, that Chaitanya-charitamrita, as an extended purport to the Bhagavatam, is also telling the story of the ideal readers of Bhagavatam. Chaitanya Mahāprabhu, to begin with, Gadadhar Pandit, we may say, is next, and then Swarup Damodar. But Swarup Damodar is also known for his singing. We may get to that a little later to read something, but here he's kind of here it's Krishnadas Kaviraj is reinforcing this point, the mercy of the devotees. The devotees are very kind. And so this person who apparently was, we say in English slang, not quite up to scratch. He was not quite up to the standard of what was expected by the devotees in terms of literary qualification. Nonetheless, he is accepted by them. This is a nice lesson for us. We have our standards, and we urge people to come to these standards, to participate in association of devotees, and at the same time, we are, as followers of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, wanting to extend his mercy, and extension of his mercy in this case means being inclusive rather than exclusive. I've written something about this it was published as part of an introduction to Radhika Raman's book on Chaitanya Vaishnava philosophy. I made a sort of analysis of the whole Chaitanya-charitamrita in terms of different types of persons that interact with Lord Chaitanya. And I made this as, I didn't put a chart in this article, but if you can imagine like a target where you have a small circle in the center and you have expanding concentric circles beyond this this central small point, where in the center of this target, so to say, we may imagine we have Lord Chaitanya and his intimate associates. And there you could have sort of within that small circle, you could have smaller circles of more and more intimate associates, in which case you would have Swarup Damodar together with Ramananda Roy very much in the center of that center. But then you have a circle outside that center of Lord Chaitanya with his associates, and I proposed that next circle out would consist of other Vaishnava traditions, where we meet, for example, we meet Lord Chaitanya visits in South India, the followers of the Śrī Sampradaya and the Madhva Sampradaya, And he also meets with one of the followers of the Nimbarka Sampradaya, although that is not explicit, in his youth, when he meets meets the Kashmiri Keshava, known as Keshava Kashmiri. Turns out he's a Nimbarki. And he also meets Vallabhacharya. Vallabha is certainly a Vaishnava of the Vallabha Sampradaya. So we see different sorts of interaction with them, and the general theme of Chaitanya-charitamrita is that Lord Chaitanya is bestowing his mercy on them in different ways. And then there's another circle which goes, it's further out, it's beyond the circle of the Vaishnavas, and I wanted to keep this relatively simple, so I sort of put in one group here those representing Brahminical culture. And here we have especially the different Mayavadi sannyasis and Mayavadi scholars. So we have, of course, sharp, you can say sharp collisions with them in philosophical terms. Yes, but there's also a lot of sweetness in those exchanges. And so we see how the exchange is a way of showing how Lord Chaitanya is interacting with them to attract them to Krishna. Going a step further beyond another ring, we have one category called paishandis. And the paishandis include tantrics, it includes Buddhists, and it includes tribals. And the reason all three are in one category is because Krishnadas Kaviraj refers to all three of them as paishandi, which is sometimes translated as heretic, sometimes as atheist. It's a rather strong negative term. It's also in the Bhagavatam. It comes up in the story of Lord Indra in his interaction with Prithu Maharaj when he takes on disguises. And he creates various paishandi groups by disguising himself as a sannyasi, different types of renunciants. In any case, we have the paishandis. Then beyond the paishandis, we have Muslims. And I put them further out because in terms of social relationship, in the time of Śrī Caitanya, one would have to say they are considered very distant. And they would be referred to in Chaitanya-charitamrita usually as Yavana, which Srila Prabhupada often would translate as meat eater, the meat eaters. But this generally Yavana, which also can refer to a geographical area pointing toward Greece and Turkey, it actually is indicating the Muslims. Well, Lord Chaitanya is extending himself further and further and further outward, and in each case he is being inclusive in one way or another. Sometimes there's what we might call a conversion, sometimes in a different way. We could have a whole seminar on this subject, but this is not for that purpose. There's one more ring in my scheme, which is yet further out beyond the Muslims. Anyone want to guess who might be included in those categories?
Jews and Christians.
Well, we don't hear about Jews and Christians in Chaitanya-charitamrita. Yes, animals, but also inanimate beings, and also natural features. So sand dunes, for example, and jungles and trees, but animals, yes, animals in the Jharikanda forest, for example. But there's something I found quite interesting here, and that is Lord Chaitanya's engagement with animals and with stones when he goes to Govardhan, for example, or with sand dunes, or with water when he dives into the water. We find the emotional pitch of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's activity is at its highest. It's at its highest when he is engaging with so-called inanimate or, animal, most distant, so to say, from himself. Now there's one category here which we have not talked about. What might that be? Yes.
They came, when he was to birth, they came at the house and they started wondering.
Okay, that's. I was thinking about this, and I thought, well, yes. Again, to keep things simple, I didn't include them, but in one sense, they enter into the middle circle. So, for example, Chota Haridas. After Chota Haridas commits suicide, he becomes a Gandharva, and as a Gandharva, you can say, he comes back, he becomes again an associate of Lord Chaitanya, but in this different realm. But there's one other category we have not yet discussed. Huh? Kings? No. No, devotees they're toward the center. Women. Yes, women. So where do women fit in this scheme of mine? Huh? 3.5. Yeah, Madhavi is a half. Yes, you were, huh? They're in the center, aren't they? Madhaji, you were saying? What about Sachi Mata? She's very close, yes. Lakshmi Priya, Vishnu Priya. What about the lady in the temple that Lord Chaitanya, that climbed on the shoulder of Lord Chaitanya? And what about the Devadasis? And so it's complicated. The ladies make this a little complicated. Sorry, but I discussed this with Radhika Raman Prabhu one time. How to sort of put them, locate women in my scheme. And he said most of the women actually would be in the inner circle, but on the inside of the outer rim of the inner circle. This seems to be where Krishnadas Kaviraj is locating them. Now, of course, we could take each individual case and probably make a much more complicated scheme or chart for whatever purpose that might be. But the general idea I wanted to make from all of this was how Lord Chaitanya, how there are distinctions, and they're very clear distinctions being made, social distinctions, philosophical distinctions, And these, you can say, are divisions. And then Lord Chaitanya is coming along, and he's, in so many different ways, he's crossing over these lines. He's crossing over them. But he's not necessarily obliterating the lines. He's crossing over. Sometimes he's bringing... Haridas Thakur, he is considered to be Muslim. And yet, what does Lord Chaitanya do with the body of Haridas Thakur when he dies? He personally picks him up and dances with him. This is so un-Brahminical. First of all, it's a dead body. Second, it's a Muslim dead body. You know, this is really crossing a lot of boundaries to show that he is my devotee. So this sort of thing is going on, and here we see sort of Damodar in the mood, we can say, in the spirit that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has. He is extending that spirit by, first of all, being quite sharp in making this point. You've got the philosophy wrong here. And Saurabh Damodar we might also want to think of as a rasa virtuoso. He has what Germans call Feingefühl. You know, he's got he's a Feinschmecker, and he appreciates rasa when it's right and when it's wrong. When it's rasa basa, ooh, it really hurts his ears. You know, like a professional musician, when they hear notes that are a little flat, they want to plug up their ears. They have highly sensitized ears. So Saurabh Damodar is like that. But his refinement is also such that he is overflowing. He becomes an agent, an instrument of the mercy of Lord Chaitanya. And then this spills over into the feelings of all the associates of Lord Chaitanya. And therefore, this unnamed Brahman, who remains unnamed, is permitted to enter and join with the devotees. Hare Krishna. Śrī Caitanya-charitamrita ki jai. Some further points, comments? Shyamananda Prabhu, I haven't seen you for some time.
This point really resonates with me. As someone who should, who's convinced my main existence is to do drama, I always, interesting, the point before Brahman meets Sri Damodar, he said, the performer for all the devotees, and the devotees said, well done, well done.
Yeah. They appreciate it.
Someone who knew a little bit more, and he goes, huh? So I think we have the state of drama in ISKCON right now. I keep hearing, oh, devotees love the drama.
Yeah.
Why? Because they laugh their heads off.
Yeah.
Even though it was philosophically questionable, characteristically wrong, and rationally completely wrong. Yet, we really are at that state in ISKCON, and where it's like, if you ask us something, you say something wrong, you'll have 10 people jump on your head.
Yep.
If you do a drama wrong, you don't mind, as long as we laugh along the way. So really,
Yeah.
this, just recently looked at this reference that I can pull it out now as a Shastric reference, how just because the word like it doesn't mean it's correct. It has to be done properly.
Yes, Rupa Goswami wrote a small book on sort of rules of drama, and I'm forgetting the name of it now, but I haven't read it because I haven't seen a translation of it, but one devotee scholar who studied it said it's actually not particularly original. He's mainly just taking from other sources, but it's what he decided is important. But one point I remember is he's saying that the dramatist is free to make changes to a story that is found in Shastra, if he or she gets the rasa right. So for the purpose of rasa, for bringing out rasa, because that's what drama is all about in traditional Sanskrit drama, one can play with the original story to some extent. So that is there, but to get the rasa right, that's the challenge. Which is not to say, therefore, we shouldn't try. I want to add that because coming up next February in Mayapur, there is going to be the ISKCON Leaders Sangha. And this is quite a large gathering. They had at the last one at least 800 leaders from around the world. And what they do is have many seminars prepared in advance by devotees who have proposed, I want to give a seminar on this or that subject. So they invited me to make a proposal for doing such a presentation, and I thought about it. And I thought, actually, okay, I'll make a proposal. My proposal is to give a presentation, not really a seminar, because they only give 1 hour. But I'll give a presentation on the subject of writing. My title is Write and Be Happy. With a subtitle, I want to encourage more devotees to write, because I find this valuable for myself, and I think it's invaluable for other devotees, and collectively I think we need to make a mark in the world by both Srila Prabhupada's books and our own writing. People want to see, well, that's okay, that's what your founder Acharya has said. What do you say? What do you think? What's your experience? What's your realization? People want to know. Yeah. Yes, Manu.
I was just curious, you said you didn't publish the schedule, but is it anywhere where we can find it?
I said I did publish it.
The schedule?
Schedule? You mean this chart?
No, the chart.
Oh, well, in the essay that I wrote, I didn't put this, but I described it.
I understand that. Is the chart available somewhere?
It's in my computer. It's in a PowerPoint. I did present it as a PowerPoint one time, years ago. Yeah, it was here in Radhadesh. Yeah. Yes.
One was exposing these circles, and one was mentioning the embryos. My thought was there some exchange from Chaitanya with cows?
An exchange with Lord Chaitanya with cows. Well, not referenced in Chaitanya-charitamrita directly that I remember, but he does hear the flute of a cowherd boy. And what happens when he hears that flute? He runs to the Goshala. He does? Okay. Yeah, he collapses in ecstasy, and then the cows come to him. He looks like a pumpkin. Pumpkin or tortoise? Tortoise, pumpkin? Anyway, they're licking him, okay. Yeah. Outer rim and the inner circle. That was Radhika Raman's suggestion. Say again? Inner circle but how to, I'd have to draw a picture or something within the inner circle, but kind of on the edge.
But Lord Chaitanya completely changed his whole sannyasa direction because of the desire of his mother,
Yeah, therefore she's in the center. Okay. Well, what I ended up doing in this chart was we put women all the way across, center all the way out, including in all of the circles, because there are women in all the different categories, but not so much is mentioned about them in Chaitanya. Because my purpose was to kind of chart out the text of Chaitanya-charitamrita. Yes, and
in order to empathize more with his full Brahmana part, maybe we can make comparison with the history of Christianity and all the heresies, because it was quite complex to understand the position of Jesus Christ and the politics.
yeah.
It was also quite complex to understand the position of Lord Chaitanya.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Now it's easy because we have so much literature.
Yeah. Yes, the Christian church took, 300 years to come up with their doctrine of the identity of Jesus Christ. It was about 300 years, wasn't it? They had so many conferences. They had a lot of GBC meetings. And finally came out with something. And then a few centuries later, the Unitarians said, nah, we don't go with that. Trinitarian, Unitarian. For some years, I was actually raised in the Unitarian church. But yeah, it's not so easy. And historians of our own tradition will point out that the understanding of the identity of Lord Chaitanya took about 80 years with Krishnadas Kaviraj coming with the full understanding. Prior to him, there are other biographies which give one sense, another sense, something more, something less, and there's a sense of exploring, trying to understand. And then Krishnadas, he sort of unfolds the full understanding. And that took, you can say, from his departure, that took about 80 years. Yeah. Yes, Prantam.
Commentary that the inner circle. Could you also say that because Govinda was the servant of Chaitanya, so he was also quite close in that circle, but that is also has to do with the rasa. Like Madhusati had the Vatsalya rasa, and Raman and Roy and Sarvadamra were much more like in the most intimate rasa.
Yes, we could. We could say something like that. Then it becomes, and we have to expand the chart, which, it's very interesting to think about. Yes, thank you. Yes.
If I can, just about the masculine word now, just what you said before, in all the things, what is read somewhere is that masculine rulers in post-Chaitanya time, they were supported in terms of maintenance of the temples. And it's kind of contradictory from what we are reading in Chaitanya-charitamrita, the very recent. According to some camps, they were giving much more than the time before. So, do you know anything about that?
Not more than to say we know, not from Bengal, but we know from north central India, the Mathura area. We know that Akbar was quite supportive. That it was his general Man Singh who constructed the Govinda Mandir, although he was apparently a Shakta. So there was, quite some complex political situation. And then the grandson or great-grandson, Aurangzeb, kind of turned all of that around, and he became, quite nefarious for his destruction of temples. And it's said that it was, there's that story that he saw the Govindaji Mandir from a distance. He saw a light on the top of the temple, and he asked an assistant, "What is that?" "Oh, that's the Govindaji." "Chop it down," he ordered. And so the Shikara, supposedly, I'm saying supposedly because others who have looked on the roof, who have climbed up on the roof of, now it's a flat roof, and they say there's no architectural evidence of any destruction. So it yeah, go figure. But anyway, so it was complicated. Some of the Muslim rulers were, they may very well have been supportive because they wanted stability in their kingdom. They didn't want to just, they weren't fanatical. Akbar, indeed, for some time, it was just for a short time, but he had a special hall constructed in his palace for having what today we might call interfaith dialogues. It's sort of a strange room. I haven't seen it directly, but I've seen photos. He personally would sit in a very high place above all of the scholars who were invited, and he would just look down and listen while they would all discuss and debate. And for some time there were Christian missionaries, Jesuits coming from Goa, who were invited to those meetings, to those gatherings, and they lived in the palace compound for quite some time. And it's they used to write letters back to their authorities in Rome, and those letters are available. You can read those letters, where for some time they're getting quite excited and hopeful that Akbar is going to become converted. He's going to become a Christian. One major obstacle was there, that Akbar had 4 wives, and Christians were, you could only have 1 wife. And Akbar was not about to give up 3 of his wives to become a Christian. Hare Krishna. Well, it's getting late. Srila Prabhupada ki, Śrī Caitanya Mahāprabhu ki, Gaur Premanande. Hare Krishna.